Number 7 of Real Madrid, the man once seen as the heir to Cristiano Ronaldo and the face of a new Galácticos 3.0 era.
Vinicius, the rising star of Real Madrid, flying at the moment. You cannot catch him. Scoring goals for fun. Who needs Mbappe? They've got Vinícius Júnior.
The number 1 contender for the Ballon d'Or.
In my opinion, the best player in the world at the moment. He is absolutely unreal at times.
Vinícius Júnior has established himself as the best player on the planet.
Vinícius Júnior deserves 100% now to win the Ballon d'Or. In 10 finals he's been at Real Madrid, he's won 9. He's going to be the first Brazilian since 2007 to win the Ballon d'Or. And I hope in Copa America he shows up and he becomes the best player in the tournaments ahead of Lionel Messi with Argentina. He's got to go bold and he's the leader of this Brazil national team squad.
People used to fear the very mention of Vinícius Júnior because of his blistering pace, dazzling technique and incredible goal-scoring instinct.
Junior right now, when he focuses and concentrates on playing the game and displaying his talent, the special talent that he is world-class. He is at an elite level. When he concentrates and focuses on fighting with everybody else, he comes back to the crowd. But when he's all about playing, there's no stopping him.
Obviously, very soon he started to play, and a lot of people laughed with him because of missing goals and so, but you could see it's something special, and I thought he was going to be good, but I didn't expect him to be that great.
¿Con Mbappé o con Vinicius? Vinicius. Con Vinicius. Y eso es, pues, sálvese quien pueda. Corre el triple que yo. Eso es, pues, intentar agarrarlo, intentar que hacer tiempo para que llegue uno que corre más y te ayude, porque si no estás liquidado.
But now, people just see him as a drama king with sky-high wage demands and an empire collapsing the moment Kylian Mbappé stepped in.
We're talking about bad Vini. We're not talking about how good he was in the game and how good he was in the first half and how he was taking players on and how he was creating opportunities and how he was taking advantage of the 1v1 situations. All of this, now we're talking about your behavior, not your playing. See, now the conversation is not about your playing. Now the conversation is about your behavior, about what you said, what you didn't say. You are doing yourself, Vinny. You are doing yourself harm. You are harming your career. You're harming your image that you worked so hard to build.
No longer the centre of the team. Now, whenever he speaks, the story doesn't stay within football. It turns into controversy.
Vinicius is the star of La Liga of the future. He's, on the way to becoming the best player in the world. If this guy is calling Spain a racist country, which is what he did, and calling your league a racist league, and implying, as he did at the end of that statement on Instagram for Vinicius, he said, "I will keep fighting the racists, even if it's far from here," which is an implied threat saying, sort this out or else. When that's happening with your most kind of valuable asset as a player, you need to sort this out. And
what the hell really happened with Vinícius Júnior? What changed? Is Vinícius truly being targeted? Or is the way he reacts pushing everything out of control? Vinícius Júnior's problem isn't that he's playing poorly. In fact, he still delivers explosive performances, still gives the feeling that he can decide a game with a single run. But elite football isn't defined by moments, it's defined by consistency. And that's exactly where the problem begins. Vinícius no longer makes a difference on a consistent basis. Between flashes of brilliance are prolonged quiet spells, where he almost disappears from the flow of the game. No longer the focal point of attacking build-ups, nor the constant threat he once was. There have been stretches where he's gone 4-5 consecutive matches without a goal or an assist. For a player who used to be the centrepiece of Real Madrid's system, that's not just a statistic, it's a signal. Because a player a system is built around cannot afford to disappear for that long, when it happens, the conversation is no longer about form, it's about role. And when the role begins to fade, that's when a star is no longer controlling the system, but slowly being left behind by it.
Vinny Jr., very poor. For what you expect of him, the players that let Real Madrid down were Vinny Jr. He's another one that thinks he should play every game when he's not performing. 0 goals in 6 Champions League games, 5 goals in 16 La Liga games. Shows that he's not at the level that he was in the Ballon d'Or year where he was close to getting it. But he's just, when you watch him out, basics he does wrong. He's not really getting past players anymore. Look at Vinny Júnior. He's got that ego, like he thinks he's the superstar, but he's not putting in performances.
Looking at Vinicius' current disappearance, the concern becomes obvious. Why? Because we all remember how close he once was to the throne. Looking back to the 21-22 season, that wasn't just a good campaign, it was a full-scale raid on the elite. Vinícius went from a doubted youngster to the man who decided a UEFA Champions League final. 22 goals, 20 assists. That was the arrival of a superstar. Not just a performance, but a declaration to the world. This is my era.
Here's Vinícius. Nice and lively down the left-hand side so far, and he's got a run on them again here. Clips it back. Benzema's head. Oh, what a goal! That's an absolutely sensational header from Karim Benzema. Lovely ball. Vinícius Júnior. Still Vinícius, going to try a shot. What a goal! Vinícius Júnior. Is there a more on-form player in La Liga right now, apart perhaps from Benzema? Well,
from that moment on, Vinny wasn't just playing football, he was hunting individual greatness. He played with the confidence of someone who believed he was number one. And soon, the name Vinícius Júnior entered the Ballon d'Or race. One explosive season brought him closer than ever to the Ballon d'Or. The world believed a new era of football had begun. But everyone was wrong. He finished as runner-up. The Ballon d'Or cruelly turned away from Vinícius and instead called the name of Rodri. A shocking outcome, not just for Vinny, but for football fans worldwide at the time.
The 2024 Ballon d'Or French football winner is Rodri.
O vencedor da bola de ouro 2024 é...
Ah, Rodri, mano! Eita puta!
In my opinion, he deserved to win the Golden Ball. It was unfair, in my opinion. I say here in front of everybody. They give to Rodrigo. He deserved to, but I think they should give to Vinícius because he win the Champions League. They scored in a final goal. The other issues for me is not important. When you deserve, you should give who deserve.
He stood right at the entrance of football's Temple of Legends. Missing out on the Ballon d'Or was a disappointment, even a setback, but Madrid and the world still believed his dominance was inevitable. Even he believed he would return 10 times stronger. This was no longer about potential. This was a king waiting to be crowned. But here's the difference between expectation and reality. Vinny never took the next step. After reaching that threshold, his trajectory flattened. He didn't decline, but he stopped evolving. Instead of turning excellence into a habit, his form began to fluctuate. The big moments were still there, but the constant dominance disappeared. At the same age, Cristiano Ronaldo had already delivered a 42-goal season. Not just a great year, but the beginning of sustained dominance, where scoring and influence became the default. That's the line. Vinícius reached the peak, came incredibly close to football's greatest individual honour, but never turned it into a repeatable standard, never sustained dominance the way the greatest players do. Everything began to shift with a new variable, Kylian Mbappé.
Me voy a hacer 1, 2, 3 y vamos a decir juntos a la Madrid, como una gran familia. 1, 2, 3, a la Madrid!
When we knew that Mbappe was going there, how is he going to balance that team?
Nathan, is there not, aside from Vinícius Júnior, just saying, wait a minute, why am I the one that has to sacrifice my best position? Because I've proved that I am one of the best players in the world here at Real Madrid. Look what I did for you in the semi-finals, for example, compared to what Kylian Mbappé did for PSG, where he went missing.
Let's be clear, this isn't a drama about clashing egos in the dressing room. Real Madrid's problem is simpler and far more lethal. It's a matter of instinct. When you place two predators with the same DNA into one system, chaos is inevitable. Both worship the left flank, both demand the ball at their feet, and both operate on the same script. Cut inside and kill the game. This isn't complementarity, it's complete overlap. In elite football, space is the most expensive commodity. And right now in Madrid, the real estate on the left wing is severely overcrowded.
Big questions as to whether or not Vini and Mbappe can play together. Vini had his best spell when Mbappe was out.
I mean, I agree. We've seen Vini not be at his top level when Mbappe's in the lineup. They both want to shift, like you mentioned, they both want to shift to that left side. There's only enough space for one of them on that side. And when you're out of that position, don't feel as comfortable, Vini is clearly struggling with that. And I think that's just part of the issue. The team is going to struggle back from the midfield as well.
You know he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not, of course.
They can't play together. I'm not convinced. In order to win a Champions League, I'm not convinced that they can play together. To be competitive in La Liga-ish, okay, right? But for the standard this club has, for me, I know that Papa Perez has his own agenda, and ultimately what he says goes.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the club, if you're going to build a club around him, they can't coexist for me.
When two superstars crave the same square metre of space to shine, the system cannot be fair. It is forced to choose. No written announcement is needed. The pitch itself delivers the answer. Who is prioritised? Who must sacrifice? And who becomes the focal point of decisive passes? The system at Real Madrid doesn't argue, nor does it need press releases. It simply does what it does best: optimise. At the highest level, football is a game of probabilities. And when attacking patterns begin to follow a new pathway, the ball naturally flows toward the zone with the highest chance of scoring. This isn't emotion, it's a new order built on pure efficiency. You still see Vinícius Júnior on the pitch, you still see the touches, the runs, but look closely at the core of the machine. It no longer revolves around him. The decisive passes, the knife-edge moments that once instinctively found Vini's feet are now shifting toward a different coordinate. From being the finisher, the man who dictated the entire game, Vini is gradually being pushed to the margins, becoming just a cog in the system. No one says it publicly, but the way the team functions is an undeniable statement. Vinícius is no longer the centre at Santiago Bernabéu Stadium. He is now part of a new structure, one being reshaped around a single objective: maximum efficiency, regardless of the cost, even if that cost is the dimming of a star. When influence shrinks, a superstar's survival instinct kicks in, and with Vinícius, it triggers an unavoidable chain reaction. He begins to fall into the trap of overcompensation, holding onto the ball longer, becoming more elaborate in one-on-one situations, as if trying to reclaim control, a kind of authority the system no longer hands to him by default. He is no longer playing within the rhythm of the team. He is playing to resist being forgotten.
Tendrías que haber pasado. Bueno, pues cuando lo ve Vinícius, le mire, le dice: ¿qué quieres? ¿Qué quieres? Que se calle la boca.
This leads to rush decisions in the final third. Long shots when teammates are in better positions, solo dribbles into crowds of defenders. It's the image of a player trying to force the game to revolve around him again. He's no longer waiting for chances, trying to invent them under intense psychological pressure. And when the script doesn't go his way, the mask of confidence begins to crack. It's all there in the body language: frustrated arm swings, bullet-like stares when he doesn't receive the ball, visible irritation after failed actions. This is no longer the cold-blooded finisher who killed Liverpool in Paris. This is the portrait of a star losing direction, a warrior trapped in his own negative emotions. The once rock-solid mentality has been replaced by a fragile, easily shaken state. And it exposes a harsh reality: Vini is losing the battle within himself.
Vinícius Júnior has told the club he doesn't want to renew his contract, while his relationship with head coach Xabi Alonso remains strained.
Almost at the beginning of the Alonso era, because the coach had planned to bench Vinícius in the Club World Cup semi-final against Paris Saint-Germain. Vinícius was aware about his coach plan, so the start wasn't the best for them. And then you just have to take a look to the statistics. He has been benched 4 times, something that it's really unusual. This is the current situation, which is far from ideal. He thinks and he feels that he should be treated like, for example, Mbappé, meaning he should be always a starter.
When the cracks on the pitch aren't repaired, they begin to spread like a virus beyond the touchline. This is no longer about 4-3-3 or 4-4-2. It has turned into a direct clash of philosophies with Xabi Alonso. On one side, a coach representing discipline and structural rebuild. On the other, a star clinging to former privileges. These collisions don't explode in words. They simmer through subtle headshakes, substitution decisions, and egos that fail to align. Madrid's stability now resembles a calm lake, but beneath the surface, currents are building, ready to pull everything under. No official sacking, no front-page scandal, yet invisible pressure has engulfed Valdeberdas. The whispers, the media speculation, the unsettling silence in the tunnel, they say everything. The system is cracking from within, and all eyes are now on the most powerful figures, waiting to see who survives this silent purge. What we are witnessing in Madrid isn't the result of a single mistake. It's a perfect storm where the most complex problems collide and amplify each other. At the tactical level, it's a distorted structure. Vinícius Júnior is no longer the sole priority. Forced to share influence with similar profiles, he loses his spatial privilege, making the style that once defined him feel out of sync. At the personal level, it's the resistance of a powerful ego. A star who once sat at the centre of the universe is now struggling to adapt to a new order, leading to increasingly extreme, individualised decisions on the pitch. But the tragedy doesn't stop at the touchline. Surrounding Vini is a toxic environment, relentless media pressure and endless off-field controversies. Together, they form a massive pressure cooker, draining the last reserves of his patience. When these three forces, tactical, personal and external, intersect, they don't just add up, they amplify one another. Every small mistake is now examined under a microscope, turning into a full-blown crisis of confidence. Vinícius is no longer just fighting opponents, he is fighting a system that is gradually phasing him out.
We have to talk about how disrespectful Vinícius was. Not attending a ceremony like the Ballon d'Or, supporting Vinícius Júnior. And this is the way you are repaying the confidence of the club? Disrespecting the manager? Disrespecting your teammates? I'm done with Vinícius Júnior. I'm done.
He's not a victim, he's a protagonist. He's the reason we're talking about this. Again, we're talking about Vini Jr. and his attitude. And I'd rather not talk about it. I'd rather talk about how brilliant he was, but we can't.
In this stark picture, external pressures are no longer abstract. They are measurable, painful realities. La Liga has recorded a series of racist incidents directly targeting Vinícius, from insults in the stands to outright hostile acts. These are not isolated events. They resemble a systematic psychological assault. Vini isn't just playing against 11 opponents, he's competing in a toxic atmosphere where hostility can erupt at any moment. That pressure is real, and the cost is psychological stability. However, the situation becomes even more sensitive when his reactions spark divided public opinion. Two narratives now exist in parallel. One sees a courageous victim standing up against injustice. The other questions his on-pitch behaviour as excessive. This intersection has turned Vinícius into one of the most polarising figures in modern football. He is no longer just a player. He is the centre of an ongoing debate about the line between self-defence and loss of control at the highest level.
Eu só queria jogar futebol, só quero jogar, só quero fazer de tudo pelo meu clube e pela minha família.
Vinícius is not the only issue, but he is the one most affected by the reshuffling of pieces at Real Madrid. The ingredients that once fueled his explosion, the left-wing space, the freedom to make mistakes, are no longer what they used to be. When the system evolves, the cost is the comfort of individuals. And at Real Madrid, there is a principle that has stood for decades. No one is above the system. No matter who you are, no matter how many trophies you've won or decisive goals you've scored in finals, when the structure changes, your position must change with it. Real Madrid never stands still waiting for an individual to catch up. It always moves forward, even if it means leaving its stars behind. This doesn't erase what Vinícius has contributed, but it redefines his harsh reality today. Your value is not in your past. In Madrid, your value is measured by how much you still fit into the machine right now. Vini was once the centre of the universe. Now, he must learn to adapt or accept being left behind by the system. Admit it, watching Real Madrid fall is satisfying.
Pause for the shot! Put the cherry on top! My God!
Hey! Oh my God! Oh my God!
I never thought I'd say this, but the ref us. Say the line, Bart! But we have 15 champions.
Knocked out by a second division team in the Copa del Rey.
For the second time and first since 94-95, Real Madrid eliminated by lower league opposition for the first time since the 2021 year. This is a disaster for Real Madrid.
Defeated by their rivals in the Supercopa de España final.
But Barcelona have done it tonight. They are the 2026 Spanish Super Cup winners.
Bringing in Xabi Alonso to restore the winning DNA at the Bernabeu, only for it to end with a dismissal letter. Miracles didn't come packed in his luggage, but failure still follows the script.
Madrid are unhappy, of course they are. It wouldn't be natural if they weren't. For Mbappe, the real emotion is about to hit them. They're out of the Champions League at the quarter-final stage again, and I can't, Andy, believe the way in which they finished it.
The squad worth hundreds of millions to break records, only for Real Madrid to break the wrong one. Their first trophyless back-to-back season in 16 years.
They're not in the Champions League anymore, Tom. They're not in, well, it's looking unlikely in La Liga to win the title there. They're out Copa del Rey. Second season now, they've not won a major trophy. How far off are they from what we expect to see from Real Madrid?
It's a massive disappointment. The expectations at this club are high, as they should be given the roster that they have and the spend that they have.
For the first time in a long while, no one feels sorry for them. Not because people hate Real Madrid, but because a sense of satisfaction is taking over.
What are you saying, bro? What? Hey, what? Let me chat to you. What? You trying to get active, bro? Are you trying to get active? What?
No more remontadas, no more of that. They always find a way to survive feeling. Real Madrid have finally become ordinary. No legend, no aura, just pure collapse. For the first time, everything returns to what it truly is. Fairness. The problem isn't just in the defeats, it's in the way we've perceived Real Madrid over the years. Throughout multiple seasons, Real Madrid didn't just win matches, they controlled the entire narrative around those victories.
They prayed for miracles, and miracles arrived! Real Madrid, the team of dreams! Where has that come from? How did that happen?
The Champions League DNA are the mentality of kings, and they always find a way. Phrases repeated enough times to become a kind of collective belief, where everything that happened on the pitch was explained in the same direction. If they won, it was destiny. If they struggled, it was merely the opening act of a comeback. And if they played poorly, no one truly analysed it deeply, because the narrative had already done that job in advance.
How have Real Madrid done this again?
The truth is that they were dead. The only people that believe that Real Madrid still had an opportunity after the 90th minute was the Real Madrid players. Maybe this team, this group of players, this whole club in Champions League is something else. It's something special, something that cannot be touched. They are something special to watch in moments like this.
But this is exactly where things started to go off track. That narrative was no longer just a way of storytelling. It gradually replaced the way football itself was explained. People said Real Madrid controlled matches, but in reality, many times they controlled nothing beyond moments. People said mentality created victories, but in fact, many times it was simply chaos being aromanticized, where disjointed plays and unstructured situations were elevated into symbols of character.
It's about moments. Real Madrid, for example, in this sense, I remember the game they go against Liverpool, and they were 2-0 down, and I saw their faces, I was like, these guys are not worried. And I was saying to the lads, guys, you seen their faces, like they're not kind of, we will overcome this situation, don't worry. I couldn't explain. I think it's something you have to live, and when you win it, you realize how tough it is.
And from that point, a distorted logic began to form. When Real Madrid won, it was considered legendary and seen as proof of greatness beyond tactics. When they lost, it was treated as an accident and something not worth analysing. And when they played poorly, everything was immediately covered by a familiar promise that they would eventually find a way, just as they always had. Over time, the narrative no longer ran alongside football, it moved ahead of it and became the lens through which people viewed Real Madrid. When that happened, the real issues almost disappeared from the discussion, not because they did not exist, but because they did not fit the story that had already been constructed. That is why, for a long time, Real Madrid could play without control, could win without truly imposing themselves, and could rely on moments while still being seen as a perfect system. The narrative always came first, and the matches were merely shaped to fit that narrative.
Arsenal's a really good team, so I think they can do really good against Real Madrid. But still, Real Madrid is Real Madrid, so I think they're going to.
I think that in London we lost, but in the Bernabeu we win because we are the Real Madrid, and this is the best club in the world.
It is not that Real Madrid lacked quality, but rather that the way they were perceived made everything become immune to analysis. But now, as defeats no longer come as isolated shocks, but instead form a pattern, as those decisive moments no longer arrive at the right time to save them, and as matches no longer bend to the familiar script, that layer of narrative begins to crack. And when it cracks, what is revealed is not a legendary team struck by bad luck, but a team that never truly controlled matches in the way we once believed.
Judging by the football, for the large majority of that game, Bayern can say they walked away from the Bernabeu being better, outplaying Real Madrid, and feeling confident that they can replicate that at home.
When the narrative is no longer strong enough to cover reality, you are forced to return to the most fundamental thing, football. Because beyond all the DNA, the mentality, and the idea that always find a way, there is a very simple truth that Real Madrid cannot avoid. Aura does not press, aura does not build up, aura does not save you from being outplayed for 90 minutes. When the narrative disappears, when those moments no longer arrive at the right time, what remains is structure, system, and the way a team truly operates on the pitch. And that is exactly when Real Madrid's issues, once hidden, begin to show. So if you strip away the story and look only at what is actually happening on the pitch, their real picture starts to emerge.
All right, listen. I understand what he's doing, but even the players also understand that the messaging of him taking the blame ignores some of the issues that this team has.
Now, of course, you want to win it. Of course, you're trying to win it. And of course, you need to win it. But at no point during the game today did we get the feeling that any of those things were true.
Real Madrid's problem is not form, but choice. They have not simply declined in performance. They have deliberately traded away what once made them strong. They have sacrificed their system to serve their superstars. Looking directly at their issues, it is clear that this is a team stuck between two states, control and chaos. They do not truly dictate matches. They exist within them, waiting for individual moments to make the difference. This begins with the way they press and build up play. There is no clear structure. Their pressing actions are often out of sync and lack coordination, which allows opponents to break through the first line of pressure easily and force Real Madrid into a deeper, reactive position. When you fail to control the tempo from the start, you are essentially handing control of the match to your opponent. That problem becomes even more serious in rest defence, which is how the team is organised when they lose possession. Real Madrid currently do not have a defensive foundation stable enough to protect them against transitions. The distances between their lines are stretched, the shape is no longer compact, and every loss of possession carries the risk of a direct counter-attack. This is not just about individual mistakes, but the consequence of a system that is not properly structured.
We have two of the worst superstars in the world. We are disgusting, chat.
That's it, that's full time. Vad din mamma. Vad eran familj. Lära hela en existens. Sen närmatun. Are we surprised? Are we surprised about this team? No. I've had enough. I swear on my life, I've had enough of every single one of these people. I swear on my life, none of them deserve to play for Real Madrid.
Further up the pitch, the situation is no better. Real Madrid's chance creation relies heavily on the individual quality of Kylian Mbappé and Vinícius Júnior, rather than clear attacking structures. They lack consistent attacking patterns with no repeatable combinations and no systematic mechanisms to generate chances. This can work in moments, but over the long term, it is not sustainable, especially against well-organised teams. When Mbappé and Vinicius both operate on the left flank, Real Madrid end up narrowing their own attacking space. They lack a true number 9 to act as an anchor, and they lack width to stretch the opposition's defence. As a result, their attacks become crowded, overlapping, and predictable. That is why, despite having so much talent, they still give off the feeling of being powerful but chaotic in attack.
And look at where he goes and get the ball again. No 9. Look at where he stays once again. You already have 1, 2, 3, 4 players. You don't need to go there. Stay in the middle. But because he likes to go on the left, just like Vinicius, have a look. Ball's going to go. Camavinga now is your most advanced player. You don't want that, really. But again, now you're here. Try to stay in and around the box. Let them cook. Try to stay there. He likes to stay under. Stay with him. Ball is going to go on the side now. Make a run. Tap in.
Big questions as to whether or not Vini and Mbappe can play together. Vini had his best spell when Mbappe was out.
I mean, I agree. We've seen Vini not be at his top level when Mbappe's in the lineup. They both want to shift, like you mentioned, they both want to shift to that left side. There's only enough space for one of them on that side. And when you're out of that position, don't feel as comfortable, Vini is clearly struggling with that. And I think that's just part of the issue. The team is going to struggle back from the midfield as well.
And when you put all these pieces together, the question is no longer just that they are playing poorly, but why these problems keep repeating. Are Real Madrid creating chances or simply waiting for them? When everything repeats like a loop, it is no longer just about tactics, but the result of a deeper structural issue. Everything has a very specific cause. When Toni Kroos left without a direct replacement, they did not just lose a passer, they lost the central controller of the entire system. He was the one who decided when to accelerate, when to slow the tempo, and when to keep possession to suffocate the game.
Una pregunta, madridistas. La temporada que viene, o por lo menos de momento, mi número 8 está libre. ¿Tenéis una idea? La verdad, para mí es un placer dar mi número a este chico, Fede Valverde.
Certainly he will bring so much balance to this team, structure, control with the ball, controlling the tempo, controlling a lot of things that right now Toni Kroos or he provided when he was there. And I think that has an impact on everything, the defense, the manager, the forwards, Kylian. And unless they find somebody like him or a way of doing what he used to do with other people, I don't know, 2 guys if you want, but I just don't think they will get anywhere because they will keep being exposed, they will keep not moving the ball well, they will keep not being able to control anything. And I think that's they don't down.
The successor to Madrid's number 8 shirt, Federico Valverde, the player trusted by Kroos himself, has not been able to replace him or replicate what he did. In a season where the squad has been heavily affected by injuries to key players, Valverde has had to fill in the gaps across the team. At times, he has even been deployed as a right back. Of course, Valverde has still delivered standout performances to help Real Madrid win important matches, especially in clashes against Manchester City in the Champions League. But based on what he has shown so far, it is not even close to Kroos. Real Madrid's squad building, centred around big names, has led to pieces that no longer complement each other, creating an imbalanced team. Power in the dressing room leans toward the players, leaving the coach with little ability to impose structure. Real Madrid have too many runners, too many high energy and explosive players, but they lack control. They lack a brain to connect everything together.
For me, one of the big problems, or the big problem from Real Madrid, not now, this season, is they don't have leadership. They don't have leaders in that dressing room, not at all. I think they miss some players like that. And the individual mistakes. So you need to give your 200% to be able to win matches, because it's not enough what they are doing right now. That is the truth.
Bringing in Kylian Mbappé is an upgrade on an individual level, but from a system perspective, it is an incomplete addition because the team has not been adjusted to absorb his presence. When a major piece is added while the overall picture remains unchanged, imbalance becomes inevitable. Xabi Alonso is a system-oriented coach who emphasises structure, positioning and tactical discipline, but he walked into a dressing room that operates on the exact opposite logic, where individual inspiration and player power carry more weight. This is no longer a matter of tactics being right or wrong, but a complete clash of philosophies, and that clash lasted only 6 months.
Breaking news out of La Liga, where Real Madrid has agreed to mutually part ways with first-team coach Xabi Alonso.
Has Real Madrid improved? Has Xabi Alonso reached close to 100% of how he wants to leave his stamp on Real Madrid? No. So this mutually agreed to part ways, I'm not sure I buy it, because this is a man who you would want to center a project around. It's going to take some time, just that Real Madrid isn't the same thing as Bayer Leverkusen, where you do have time to build a project around. Questions here or there about who had the power, who was the one really making the calls, and the direction of this project.
After that crisis, at a moment few expected, the departure of Xabi Alonso forced Real Madrid to promote Alvaro Arbeloa from the youth team as a temporary solution. To some extent, he has brought back a degree of stability, with clearer playing patterns, better organisation, and most importantly, a reduction in chaos.
Real Madrid right now, the way they're set up with Mbappe, Vinícius Júnior, Jude Bellingham, they can be a very, very good counter-attacking team, a very strong counter-attacking team. Lads, when you coach Real Madrid, being able to connect with players, I think, is more of what is necessary at Real Madrid. And the way Real Madrid has always been is a team full of big stars, big names, and they win the way they have to win. The Real Madrid DNA, whether it's a possession football, a counter-attacking football, whatever it has to take, they find a way to win. Real Madrid DNA.
But that is only the surface. Arbeloa has not truly solved these structural issues. He has only made the current system easier to operate. The reality on the pitch reflects this clearly. The pressing is more organised, but not dominant enough. The build-up is cleaner, but lacks creativity. As a result, performances still fluctuate and lack consistency. Real Madrid are no longer completely chaotic, but they have never truly been in control either. They exist in an in-between state, transitioning from chaos into controlled chaos. All of this cannot be separated from the club's power structure. Under Florentino Pérez, the priority given to superstars and image remains the guiding principle, and this inevitably shapes how the team is built. When the structure has to serve individuals, instead of individuals serving the structure, a cycle begins to form. A tactically oriented coach is appointed, the players do not fully adapt. Results decline, the coach is replaced, and the cycle starts all over again. History, trophies, and those absurd Champions League nights have created an almost default perception whatever happens to them will always be interpreted as for a reason, even when the on-pitch issues have existed for a long time. Because of that, for years, the way Real Madrid actually played and the way people talked about them did not truly align. What makes this period notable is that those two things are finally starting to converge. When the structure on the pitch is not good enough, results are no longer saved by those familiar moments. Better organised, more disciplined, and more effective pressing teams are gaining the upper hand. It creates the sense that football is returning to its true nature, where the system defines a team's performance ceiling. The clearest contrast can be seen in PSG, when they moved away from a superstar-centred model and shifted toward a structurally coherent collective. Everything became more fluid. Their pressing became synchronised, roles were clearly defined, and build-up play no longer depended on individual inspiration. The team operates like a complete mechanism, where every piece serves the whole system. This not only helps them control matches better, but also makes their performance more consistent over time. If you still haven't known how good PSG are, I have something really special for you at the top right corner. Click it. Once the problem is clearly identified as structural, Real Madrid's solution is no longer vague, but comes down to very specific decisions. They need a tempo controller to replace the role left by Toni Kroos and regain control of matches. At the same time, separating the roles of Kylian Mbappé and Vinícius Júnior is essential to solve spatial issues, before rebuilding a pressing system that is clear enough to allow them to play proactively. From this foundation, a more defined pressing structure must be developed, so they can dictate games instead of constantly reacting to them. However, tactical adjustments cannot be sustained without changes in power dynamics. Real Madrid need to re-establish order in the dressing room, where the coach has enough authority to impose ideas and maintain tactical discipline. At that point, a bigger question emerges. Do they want to become a team that controls matches, or continue relying on moments? In that context, the future of Arbeloa becomes crucial. If they keep him, they must build a complete system around his philosophy. If not, they need a decisive change instead of continuing in this half-measured state. Therefore, Real Madrid's problem is not a lack of talent, but how that talent is organised. More dangerously, they are still delaying the decision to fix it. When everything is this clear, what remains is no longer analysis, but choice. Is this the true exposure of Real Madrid, or just the beginning of yet another familiar comeback? If you enjoy our video, don't forget to hit like to help this video reach to other football lovers, and hit the subscribe button to follow for more interesting videos about football stories. See you in the next video.